Well, howdy there again, partner. It's been about 10 days. Yeah. I was thinking about you every day. You know, I was thinking about you just now. Had a lot of really interesting things to share, but they're all tangents of one another, so it kind of just slipped by. I'm just gonna go to bed. It's the 4th, or the 5th, early morning. There was a nice celebration in the neighborhood. I missed a chance to share the fireworks with you out the window. That would have made a great shot, but I prefer to present from like a center, you know? I'm not sure why, actually, but I do. And I guess necessarily any idea that I would want to convey is not centered, so it's like a tangent of this place or some place that I'm trying to build perpetually in perpetuity, perpetuum. I find it really hard to lead with ideas. Rather, I find it too easy to lead with ideas. Um, I find what's difficult is to tie them into a point, you know, the same point constantly, especially when you don't know where or what that point is, you know. All I've got at this point, at, all I've got so far is, I don't know, the basic emotive center, intangible um, feeling of what it's like to hit record and talk to you. I can't. Well, it's formless still, obviously. I just wanted to say good night before I went to sleep. It surprisingly became late. That's all I have to say, and I should cut it and go to bed and do it again tomorrow. But the honest fact of the matter is, I miss your company, you know, so I don't want to turn it off, even though I don't have anything to say. I have lots to say, actually. Too much, as usual. It's just nice to be here, that's all. Oh, I got my second vaccination. I recovered from it about 6 hours ago. I felt like shit. I almost never feel poorly, you know, physically poor or sick. And so I was a big baby about it for 48 hours. And all of a sudden, everything feels spectacular again. Almost everything that I thought to talk to you about is kind of dark or has like a dark edge to it, you know? And something that makes me laugh about myself. It kind of, I think I'm alone in this. It's like a joke of one. And no one else laughs about this. No one else thinks it's funny. I don't think. I think they're horrified. Is that like everything I point to, more or less, not everything, but often, uh, anything I point to is going to be kind of grim. And but the point, at the same time, like, well, I was just about to tell you how good it feels to be alive, you know, after being ill from the vaccination. And, like, it was fine. It wasn't, like, dire or anything. But I was uncomfortable. And then not being uncomfortable was just, oh, the best. Food tastes great. Music is amazing. The way that clothes wear on your skin feels fantastic. Hair looks fabulous. Kind of. I had a look going on. What was it? It reminded me of like being like an English mobster. It's not right from this angle. No, that's not it at all. Not at all. But earlier I reminded myself of like be like a mod gangster in London in 1960 out of nowhere. I don't know. It was funny. I liked that. All of a sudden, it was a great pleasure to be alive. And I remember that as often as like anything else that, you know, is ominous or foreboding. But I've noticed how easy it is to get. I notice what other people pay attention to in the things that you point to. You know, the things that you bring up in conversation or make content out of. And we remember things that are painful much more than things that are not, I think, under certain circumstances. I don't know. So what? So, I just think it's funny that almost everything I think of to share to you, which I try to make kind of humorous in my mind, although fundamentally it's serious and has like a ethos behind it, if not like a, you know, imperative, a moral. What was I saying? I don't know. No matter how, I think I'm like a light-hearted person, you know? It's just, I have a hard time making other people think that too. Not that it's my job to think that. It's just a weird conundrum. I'm reflecting on the past entries I've made. They reminded me of several strange life conundrums that I think would be interesting to you. They're common but not commonly described. And that's just kind of what I talk about, but it always goes like quickly through my mind or whatever. Something else will come up. And I'll switch to that. So I'm perpetually, if for no other reason than to just be able to remember all the different things I think about. I'm perpetually trying to like weave things together into not necessarily a narrative, but some kind of like demonstrative relationship that you can draw implications from, and it motivates me because I wonder what the implications you draw, you know. Are they the same as mine? Are they things that I didn't think of? Are they, that's what's fascinating to me. Like I said, I don't have anything else to say. I probably should have clipped this by now, but I was a little lonely. I wanted to say hi to you. This center. It's an odd thing, I guess. What I end up presenting to you is like such a stark contrast to what I have in mind, and yet somehow it adequately builds towards a direction I would like to go. I had this whole thing about gratitude. I've been thinking about that for a while. I wanted to say thank you for being there, It's, I'm embarrassed how satisfying it is to even get like a handful of views on these things. Just non-zero. I'm embarrassed how much of an impression that makes on the way I feel, like, it's very sweet. I don't think any creator has derived more joy, and this is, I'm guessing, I don't know, but I imagine like if you are so brave as to start doing this, which is no small feat. It seems like everyone's doing it, but no, there are not a lot of people. I'm giving you a compliment, not myself here. I'm imagining you as a vlogger, Mr. or Miss, I'm too shy, or I can't, or I would never, what would people think, right? Like your first, you get 15 views. That's amazing. I don't think I will ever be able to do the like and subscribe shill. Like, it's standard, but just, I made that choice a long time ago. And it's part of a bigger ethic. If you yourself opt to choose to do that, I'm not judging you for that. It's just not me. It's not at all. I don't like to repeat myself, and I don't like to state the obvious when it should really be. I do like to state the obvious, but I don't like to state the implicit, which is strange about me. It's kind of foxy, I guess. Ask me about it sometime. I mean something by that, but whatever. So what? If someone asked me if I honestly thought this was going somewhere, I would say, to my own surprise, definitely. Definitely. Is it worth my time? Is this a waste of time? No. I guess there's a little piece of gratitude. I feel like this is one of the best things I've ever done. Not because it looks great or whatever, but I don't know. It's just kind of magical to find out that I'm the kind of person who would do this. I never knew. I didn't know. Um, I like that. I like that about myself. And you helped me discover that. So, I mean, if you weren't here, then there would be no point. Or it wouldn't have the same effect. That's one last thing I'll say. This is crossed my mind so many times and I've never said it out loud. I imagine someone asking me or any vlog type person, why do you do this? Someone could just make journals privately or whatever, or keep a thing. Why do you post this for other people to see? Moreover, why do you post this indiscriminately where everyone or anyone could see it? What is that? What is the significance of that? I think people are likely drawn to that question and never fully articulate it because it's like a request for some kind of intimate knowledge, and people are usually really tepid about that kind of thing. Or they vacillate between being super polite about asking something intimate and being so invasive that they're like callous about it, which I really think is just a mask for their own vulnerability. And the answer to why someone, or at least I can speak for myself, why don't I just keep this to myself, Why don't I just journal? Why do you post on the net? And I'm surprised how not obvious the answer is to everyone. It seems like it's obvious to me, or would be. When you don't keep things like this to yourself, it demands that you live up to yourself, right? If you put something forth privately, it's not really putting it forth. You can forget about it. It's easier to avoid yourself, the truth of yourself, right? And so, if you don't want to be able to avoid the truth of yourself, if that's actually a conviction that you hold, if that's a value you have, or a requisite behavior of some value that you have. I was thinking a lot about values still. We can go back to that. We will go back to that. That's not just a long one. That never stops. We can always talk about that. Past lifetimes, people will have to be talking about that after you and I are both dead, It's kind of beautiful, in a way. Anyway, if you don't want to be able to avoid the reality of yourself, well, behaving openly in the eyes of others, and not just a select group of others either, because that's their lens conforms to something that you can be surprisingly manipulative about. But if you're open in the eyes of the world, to every possible value set, Well, then there's nothing closer to there's nothing closer to standing before the eyes of God than to face the entire world indiscriminately. Terrifying, maybe. But do you want to see the truth? You know? If you want to see the truth of yourself, for whatever reason, well, there's no better lens. I mean, there's no greater lens possible, technically, mysticism aside, than, a random selection of human beings. Theoretically, all human beings. I said once the best way to make a vlog is to speak as if you were speaking with, and I kind of trailed off. But what I was going to say is that speak as if the entire world is your audience, literally. Imagine everyone. There was no one anywhere else. No one's like still at work or like doing critical. Imagine I once roughly calculated how big of a stadium you would need to to be filled by every human being alive. I think it was about like the size of Wyoming, maybe, comfortably, or not. I can't remember if I packed people in like sardines, but it's like surprisingly small. You could actually fit every person, 7 billion people or whatever, just multiply width however many times, 7 billion times, into a stadium or a state or some. It's a surprisingly small area. I think I was maybe thinking about a party with everyone. Could you imagine that? A party with every human being. Like no one was not there. Like it seems stupid at first, but then and like everyone was like in a party mood, more or less. Like it was Burning Man or something. Like everyone was on the same page, if for no other reason than like, all right, we're here, eating snacks and chatting. There's nothing else going on. Nobody had any like work to do, or like nobody had a focus outside, just the recreation of that moment. I think it was like, well, where could you do that? Not a person in a power plant, not a person in a hospital bed. As ridiculous as this is, right? Every single person. And there's just something so satisfying about that thought. There's no loose threads. You're not wondering what anyone else is doing, behind your back or whatever, which is an odd thing to think about, but that comes to mind for whatever reason. So yeah, you're at this party. Imagine if you had a chance to talk to every person, every single person. How would you address them? How could you possibly appeal? And the cool thing about that is that in this little hypothetical situation, everybody's already on board. You know what I mean? Like they know what a party is, videos, and they're like, okay, this person's going to give a little speech. You don't have to like appeal to one group over the other. I don't know. It was like a fascinating daydream to me. I'm not really. I don't feel really compelled by it at the moment. I think I'm just kind of shy about it, which is maybe one of the reasons that it took me so long to even say it again. So making a good vlog entry, standing before the eyes of God, right? Knowing the truth of yourself. You want to make a vlog and you wonder how to do it, who's your market or whatever. Oh yeah, why do you post publicly, right? I'm not really here to sell the idea of discovering the truth of yourself. That's a little trite to do that. Like, it's the thing sells itself. Everybody seeks that at some point, if not constantly, whether they know it or admit it. So it's a thing people want. The only way to get it, or a way, be yourself in front of the eyes of the world. Not a select group of people, not in a little journal by yourself. And if you picture it in your head, or at least if you picture it as I do, I don't know, just something about everyone being there and talking to everyone at once, just the necessary for pretension it just melts away. And the trivial becomes beautiful, pleasing, sufficient. Yeah. What would you say? Hi? Hi everyone? You know, you have like 30 seconds or something. You don't have to give a speech. But you would be compelled to be your absolute self, you know? I don't know, something like that. I actually compounded it even bigger because I don't know, what do they say? Like something like 100 billion human beings, 110 billion have ever lived. So imagine, I've often wondered what my, ancestors would think of me, or not think of me, and like, would we get along if I actually got to sit down with someone from my direct genetic line from like 1,000 years ago? How amazing would that be? It's not about what would we talk about. I wonder, like, what would they look like? Would we look similar? Would we get along? Would we be able to chat with each other? Indulgently, I think, yeah, of course. That would be amazing. It would be so cool. Well, I think about, if I had kids, and my kids, would I want to meet a descendant of mine from 1,000 years in the future? I would love to. That would be amazing. Would I be critical of them? Would I think that they had to get their life together? Like, no. I wouldn't waste a moment on that. I would just be in bliss to see them. What more could you want? So, with that as like a spirit or a guiding, like, emotional valence, in the same way, I imagine talking to the entire human race, talking to the entire human lineage throughout time. And I try to bring I guess this is another admission, you know. This is a thought I had once, and it's pertinent here. I've had lots of thoughts that don't have to do with vlogging. But one time I imagined I had an opportunity to talk to the entirety of the human condition, with not one person excluded. One human, like all the worst people, all the best, everyone. And just the feeling of like magnanimity, you know, of like familyness. Oh, it's solemn, but it's also very happy, and makes me kind of giddy. Like no subject would be out of place, because everything that anyone had ever done, good or bad, crude, unspeakable, saintly, it would be known and recognized, and like, oh man. And so the things that you would talk about, that shows who you are, you know. And once that little fantasy closes, you're left with your speech, what you said. And reflecting on that, having it have been witnessed, so it makes it real in a way that I've found that journaling does not necessarily that that not sharing fails to it sets a different standard. Posting these things to the net unequivocally reveals the reality of your nature, you know. And in your own self-interest, it's best to, again, this is not I'm not saying you, I'm talking to myself. It's in your own best interest. It's in my own best interest to make it as unconvoluted as possible. Have you ever seen a fake vlog? I've seen fake vlogs. And the irony of those is like, although it's not the entire truth of that person, you know, like, I imagine the creator or whatever, the speaker, believes they're like getting away with something, right? Like it's not obvious, like the way they act and the things that they say do not betray things about themselves that they have no idea. Well, they'll have to live with that, you know, but it's deeper than, oh, you'll have to live with, it's like, oh my God, you're making that of yourself. That's the real nature of you, you know, is that you're a veneer of a human being. This is your chance to like have something good and like wholesome, and that's what you do with it, in preference of like a smaller life in a private circle that may or may not be stable, you know. It's a pretty avant-garde critique, and one that isn't even part of my main program, but it's something I think about. I'm kind of like an incidental antithesis or an incidental antagonist to that genre Like, I don't know, I want to say in some ways, in most ways, in all ways but one, I don't know, some fractional difference. It doesn't matter to me. It's not even something I fucking care about at all. And yet, I cannot help but notice the stark contrast between what I do naturally and, like, there's like just, we just ended up on the opposite ends of these poles. And, because of the nature of the medium and the nature of um, the way information is distributed these days, which is completely incidental. Well, it makes us competitors. A very strange kind of competitor, wouldn't you say? And then things get a little dark, but half of that darkness is actually just my own sense of humor. So things get a quarter dark, but dark nonetheless. So, incidental competition because of the nature of distributed media, which itself is just incidental to, well, a whole system of values that we have yet to even talk about. But at the risk of being too heady or grandiose or I just think it's about standing before, well, these eyes of God, and which you can think about as everyone you could possibly know, plus everyone else who's ever existed. Imagining that. I think there's value in that idea. I think there's, well, time will tell, you know. Really, I just came to say happy 4th of July. And it's late. I missed you. Talk about some movies soon. I can't believe I'm on this whole Hollywood trip. I used to love talking about movies and shows with people. It was like, so I just miss having someone to talk to about that stuff. So, I want to use you for that. I appreciate it. Good night.